I thought I knew my wife after 20 years of marriage. Then I found the hotel reservation on her laptop and realized she'd been living a double life for months. What I did next with a fake uniform and a handwritten note destroyed her world in ways she never saw coming. My name is Clayton Hayes. I'm 46 years old, and I've been a mechanical engineer at Davidson Automotive for 18 years. I design suspension systems for luxury cars, work that requires precision, attention to detail, and the ability to spot problems before they become disasters. Funny how those same skills would eventually save my marriage from complete destruction, even if they couldn't save the marriage itself. Patricia and I have 3 kids. Connor's 20, studying business at State University. Chloe's 16, all attitude and teenage drama. Aiden's 11, still young enough to think his parents hung the moon. They deserved better than what was coming, but sometimes life doesn't ask what you deserve. The first real warning sign came on a rainy Tuesday in March. Patricia walked through the door at 9:30, claiming the client dinner ran long. She was wearing her black dress, the one I bought her for our anniversary 3 years ago. Her lipstick was gone, but she still smelled like wine and something else. Something that wasn't her usual vanilla perfume. "How was dinner, honey?" I asked from the couch, not looking away for the basketball game. "Fine," Patricia replied, already heading upstairs. "Just bored corporate stuff. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. Patricia worked as a project coordinator at Stellar Construction, managing timelines and budgets for commercial buildings. She'd been there 8 years, and client dinners were rare. When they happened, she usually came home energized, talking about new contracts and opportunities. This time, she just seemed distant. The second warning sign came the following week. Patricia started taking calls in the garage, claiming it was quieter for work conversations. She'd disappear for 40 minutes at a time, her voice a low murmur I couldn't quite make out through the walls. When I asked about it, she'd shrug and say it was just coordinating with subcontractors. "Since when do you talk to subcontractors?" I asked one evening over dinner. "Since we got that new medical center project," Patricia answered, not meeting my eyes. "It's a big job. Lots of moving parts." Chloe looked up from her phone. "Mom, didn't you say last month that project managers don't usually talk directly to subs?" Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Well, this project is different. More hands-on coordination required." The silence that followed felt heavy. Even Aiden seemed to sense something was off, pushing his peas around his plate without his usual chatter about his day at school. The third warning sign was the phone. Patricia had always been casual with her device, leaving it on counters, asking me to check her messages when she was driving. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand. She took it to the bathroom, kept it face down during dinner, and would physically flinch if anyone came near when she was typing. "Can you grab my charger from the kitchen?" she asked one Saturday morning. "Sure. Want me to plug in your phone while I'm at it?" "No." The word shot out sharper than intended. No thanks. I'll do it later." I stood in the doorway, watching my wife of 20 years clutch her phone like it contained state secrets. Something was wrong. Something big. And despite every instinct screaming at me to confront her, to demand answers, I chose to wait and watch instead. That decision would either save our family or destroy it completely. I just didn't know which yet. I started paying closer attention after that dinner conversation with Chloe. Kids have a way of cutting through adult nonsense with uncomfortable questions. If my 16-year-old daughter could spot inconsistencies in Patricia's work stories, maybe I'd been too trusting for too long. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later when Patricia left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She'd gone upstairs to shower, and Connor was home from college for spring break. He was grabbing a snack when I noticed the screen still glowing. "Dad, Mom's got like 15 browser tabs open," Connor said, reaching for an apple. "How does she find anything in that mess?" I glanced over casually. Most of the tabs were work-related, construction schedules, permit applications, vendor websites. But one tab caught my eye, a hotel booking site. The reservation confirmation was clearly visible. Grand Plaza Hotel, downtown. This coming Thursday night. Executive suite. "Connor, can you give me a minute?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. My son shrugged and headed to his room with his apple. I moved closer to the laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. The reservation was under Patricia's name, but for 2 guests. Check-in Thursday, check-out Friday morning. I took photos with my phone, hands trembling slightly. Then I closed the browser tab and walked away, my mind racing. Thursday was tomorrow. Patricia had mentioned a client dinner that evening, said she might be home late. But now I knew she wouldn't be coming home at all. The next morning, Patricia was unusually cheerful over breakfast. She hummed while making coffee, kissed my cheek before heading to work, even ruffled Aiden's hair playfully. "Don't wait up tonight, honey," Patricia said, adjusting her jacket. "The Riverside Mall project team is taking the client out for dinner and drinks. Could be a long evening." "Which client?" I asked, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. "Meridian Holdings. They're considering a major expansion." I nodded, filing away another lie. There was no Meridian Holdings contract in her current project folder. I'd check her files the night before while she slept. "Have fun," I said, meeting her eyes. "Hope it goes well." Patricia smiled, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. As her car pulled out of the driveway, I felt something shift inside me. The man who'd spent 20 years trusting his wife was disappearing, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. I called in sick to work and drove downtown to the Grand Plaza Hotel. The valet recognized money when he saw it, and $50 bought me information about which cars had reservations for executive suites that evening. I memorized license plate numbers, then positioned myself across the street in a coffee shop with a clear view of the hotel entrance. At 6:15 p.m., Patricia's silver Honda pulled up to the valet stand. She emerged wearing the red dress I'd bought her for Valentine's Day 2 years ago. She looked beautiful, confident, and completely comfortable walking into that hotel like she belonged there. 20 minutes later, a black BMW sedan arrived. The man who stepped out was tall, athletic, maybe late 30s. Brown hair, expensive suit, the kind of confident swagger that attracted attention. He handed his keys to the valet and walked through those glass doors like he owned the place. I sat in that coffee shop until midnight, watching the hotel entrance, waiting for something that would make this make sense. But some things don't make sense. Some things just break your heart in ways you never thought possible. I spent the weekend planning. 20 years of engineering had taught me that successful projects require careful preparation. This would be no different. Monday morning, I called the Grand Plaza Hotel and reserved the executive suite next to Patricia's for the following Thursday. I used a fake name and paid cash. The desk clerk was accommodating when I explained I needed the room for a sensitive business meeting. Next, I contacted Kevin, a guy from college who worked in private security. We'd kept in touch over the years. "Clayton, what kind of trouble are you in?" Kevin asked when I explained what I needed. "The kind where I need proof before I make accusations," I replied. Tuesday, I drove across town and rented a hotel uniform. The teenager behind the counter barely looked up as I paid cash for a 3-day rental. By Wednesday evening, everything was in place. I had surveillance equipment, the uniform, and most importantly, a handwritten note. "You booked this room. I paid for it. Time to check out of our marriage. Your husband." Thursday arrived gray and cold. I called in sick, telling my supervisor I had food poisoning. Patricia left for work humming some song I didn't recognize. At 3 p.m., I positioned myself in the hotel suite next door. At 4:30, Patricia arrived, looking stunning in a navy dress I'd never seen before. 20 minutes later, Bradley arrived. I'd done my homework. Bradley Hanson, senior project manager at Harrison Construction. At exactly 6 p.m., I put on the hotel uniform and knocked on their door. I'd intercepted a room service delivery in the hallway, convincing the delivery guy with a $100 tip to let me handle it. Patricia answered wearing a hotel robe, her hair disheveled, lipstick gone. She looked relaxed, completely at ease. "Room service," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We didn't order anything," Patricia said, but reached for the note I held out. "Compliments of hotel management," I replied. She took the note, unfolded it, and I watched 20 years of marriage die in her eyes. Patricia's face went white. Her entire body went rigid, and she drew in a sharp breath. "What is it, babe?" Bradley called from behind her. Patricia couldn't speak. She just stared at the note, trembling. Finally, she looked up at me, and for the first time in months, she really saw me. "Hello, Patricia," I said quietly. "We need to talk." Bradley appeared behind Patricia, wearing only boxer shorts and an undershirt. When he saw me in the doorway, his expression shifted from confusion to fear. "Who the hell is this?" Bradley demanded. "This is Clayton," Patricia whispered. "My husband." The silence was deafening. Bradley's face went through several expressions before settling on anger. I think you should leave, Bradley said, stepping forward. I looked at him calmly. Actually, I think you should leave. This is my wife, and technically, I paid for this room. Patricia, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building. How long? She looked up with tears forming. Clayton, I can explain. How long? I repeated. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months of lies, sneaking around, making me feel like I was losing my mind. 6 months of coming home to kiss me after being with him. I think we should all calm down, Bradley interjected. I turned to face him. You work for Harrison Construction. You know Harrison handles subcontracting for 3 Davidson automotive facility expansions. You know my company name was on vendor approval lists. Bradley's face went pale. He was beginning to understand this wasn't just about a cheating wife. This was about business relationships and reputations that could be destroyed. Clayton, please. Patricia found her voice. Can we talk privately? I looked at my wife, standing in a hotel room with another man, asking for privacy. Get dressed, I told her. Both of you. Meet me in the hotel bar in 15 minutes. Bradley started to protest, but I held up my hand. You have 2 choices, I said directly to him. Come downstairs and discuss this like adults, or explain to Harrison's board why Davidson Automotive is pulling $3 million in contracts because their project manager decided to sleep with a vendor's wife. The room went quiet. Patricia was crying now. Bradley looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find words. 15 minutes. I repeated, then walked away. In the elevator, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not hurt. Just cold, calculated determination to control how this played out. My wife had made her choice. Now I was making mine. The hotel bar was nearly empty at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. Patricia and Bradley sat across from me in a corner booth, both fully dressed now, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Patricia had been crying in the elevator. Her mascara was smudged despite her attempts to clean up. So here's how this is going to work, I said, setting my untouched beer on the table. Patricia, you're going to answer my questions honestly. Bradley, you're going to sit there and think about whether destroying a marriage was worth your career. Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Look, Clayton, I never meant for it to get this complicated. Complicated, I repeated, my voice deadly calm. You've been sleeping with my wife for 6 months. You work for a company that depends on contracts for mine. What exactly did you think was going to happen? Patricia finally spoke up. Clayton, please don't take this out on Bradley. This is between you and me. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. 20 years of marriage, 3 kids, a house, a life we'd built together. And she was sitting here defending the man she'd been cheating with. No, Patricia, this stopped being between you and me the moment you brought him into our marriage. I turned to Bradley. Tell me something. Did you know she had children when you started this? Bradley nodded reluctantly. She mentioned them. 3 kids, I continued. Connor's 20, home from college for spring break. Chloe's 16, dealing with typical teenage issues. Aiden's 11, still believes his parents are happily married. Did you think about them when you were booking hotel rooms? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Patricia was crying again, but quietly now. I want a divorce, I said simply. Patricia, you can have the house until we settle custody arrangements, but I want you out of my life. Bradley, I want your resignation letter on Harrison CEO's desk by Monday morning, or I'll make some very expensive phone calls. You can't do that, Bradley protested. That's extortion. I leaned forward slightly. That's consequences. You made a choice to get involved with a married woman whose husband has professional leverage over your career. Now you get to live with that choice. Patricia reached across the table toward me. Clayton, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. The kids need both their parents. I pulled my hand away from hers. The kids needed both their parents 6 months ago. Now they need one parent they can trust, and one parent who has to explain why she threw away their family for a fling. It wasn't just a fling, Patricia said, her voice breaking. I love him. Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because they hurt, but because they made everything so much clearer. Patricia hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a choice. She'd chosen Bradley over our family, over our life together, over everything we'd built. Then you can be with him, I said, standing up from the table. Just not while you're married to me. I walked out of that hotel bar feeling something I hadn't felt in months, certainty. The marriage was over. The only question now was how much collateral damage there would be. I drove home in silence, my mind racing through everything that needed to happen next. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Connor was out with friends, Chloe was at a sleepover, and Aiden was spending the night at my brother Kyle's house. For once, I was grateful for the empty house. I sat in my car for a few minutes, looking at the place Patricia and I called home for 8 years. We'd painted the front door together, planted the oak tree in the yard when Aiden was 3, built the deck where we used to have barbecues with neighbors. Now it all felt like evidence of a life that had been a lie for 6 months. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. We need to talk about the kids. Please don't do anything rash. I turned off the phone without responding. There would be time for those conversations later, but not tonight. Tonight, I needed to think. I went inside and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, something I rarely did on weeknights. I sat in my home office, surrounded by engineering textbooks and family photos, and started making lists. Practical things, lawyer recommendations, financial accounts that needed to be separated, custody arrangements, the business of dismantling a marriage. At 10 p.m., Connor came home from his evening out. He knocked on my office door, which was unusual. The kids typically just yelled hello and headed to their rooms. Dad, is Mom home yet? Connor asked, poking his head in. She's working late tonight, I said, which wasn't technically a lie. Connor studied my face with the perceptiveness that came with being 20 years old and home from college. Everything okay? You look like hell. I set down my pen and looked at my oldest son. In 2 days, I'd have to explain to him that his parents were getting divorced, that his mother had been cheating, that everything he thought he knew about our family was changing. Just work stress, I said. Nothing for you to worry about. Connor nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Well, if you need to talk about anything, I'm around. College has given me a pretty good perspective on adult problems. After he left, I stared at the family photo on my desk. It was from last Christmas. All 5 of us around the tree, Patricia and I on either side, the kids in the middle. We looked happy. We looked like a family that had it all figured out. I turned the photo face down and went back to my lists. At midnight, I heard Patricia's car in the driveway. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, heard her pause outside my office door, then continued to our bedroom. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say that couldn't wait for lawyers to translate into legal language. I slept on the couch that night, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The uncertainty was over. The lying was finished. Now came the hard part, telling the kids and rebuilding a life from the wreckage Patricia had left behind. Friday morning came too soon. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night staring at the ceiling and rehearsing conversations I didn't want to have. Patricia had left early for work without saying goodbye, probably trying to avoid the inevitable discussion about her future. Connor was eating cereal in the kitchen when I came downstairs. He looked up from his phone with the kind of casual curiosity that would disappear once he learned what was happening to our family. Mom left pretty early, Connor said between bites. Everything cool between you two? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let go to voicemail, but it rang again immediately. Then a third time. Dad, you gonna answer that? Connor asked. I stepped into the hallway and picked up. The voice on the other end was professionally calm, but delivered news that made my stomach drop. Mr. Hayes? This is Detective Harrison with Denver PD. We need to speak with you about an incident involving your wife's vehicle last night. 20 minutes later, I was at the police station learning that Patricia had been arrested for driving under the influence. She'd been pulled over at 11:30 p.m., 3 hours after leaving the hotel. Her blood alcohol was nearly twice the legal limit. She's being processed now, Detective Harrison explained. Bail hearing is Monday morning. You can see her briefly if you'd like. I found Patricia in a holding cell, still wearing the navy dress from the hotel, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. When she saw me, she started crying immediately. Clayton, I'm so sorry. I was upset after our conversation, and I stopped for drinks with Bradley. I wasn't thinking clearly. Were you planning to drive home drunk to our children? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. I called an Uber, but it was taking too long, and I just wanted to get home. I made a terrible mistake. I looked at my wife of 20 years sitting in a jail cell because she'd gotten drunk with her lover after being caught cheating. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'll post bail Monday, I said finally. But Patricia, this changes things. A lot. When I got home, Connor was waiting with questions I couldn't avoid anymore. Dad, where's Mom? Chloe called asking why she didn't pick her up from her sleepover, and Mom's not answering her phone. I sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for Connor to join me. 20 years of protecting my kids from adult problems was about to end. Connor, your mother made some serious mistakes last night. She's in jail right now, and we need to talk about what that means for our family. Connor's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, then anger. Jail? What the hell did she do? She was arrested for drunk driving. But that's not the only problem. I took a deep breath. Your mother has been having an affair for the past 6 months. I found out yesterday, and we had a confrontation that led to her drinking too much. The silence that followed was deafening. Connor stared at me like I just told him the laws of physics had changed. An affair, he repeated. Mom's cheating on you? Yes. With a man named Bradley Hanson, who works for Harrison Construction. Connor stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. How long have you known? I suspected for weeks, but I confirmed it yesterday. I caught them together at a hotel. My 20-year-old son turned to face me with an expression that was far too mature for his age. What happens now? Now we figure out how to tell Chloe and Aiden, and we start the process of getting divorced. Connor nodded slowly, processing information that would change his understanding of his family forever. Do you need help telling them? Looking at my oldest child stepping up to help manage a family crisis caused by his mother's selfishness, I felt a mixture of pride and heartbreak that I'll never forget. Monday morning's bail hearing was a circus I hadn't expected. Patricia sat beside her court-appointed attorney, looking tired and ashamed, while I sat in the gallery feeling like a stranger watching someone else's life fall apart. The prosecutor read the charges: driving under the influence, reckless endangerment, and an outstanding warrant for unpaid parking tickets that apparently dated back 2 years. Patricia had been hiding more than just an affair. Your Honor, Patricia's lawyer began, my client has no prior criminal record and is a respected member of the community with 3 children and stable employment. The judge looked unimpressed. Ms. Hayes, your blood alcohol level was .16, twice the legal limit. You were driving a vehicle that could have killed someone. Bail is set at $5,000. I posted the bail, not because I wanted to help Patricia, but because the kids needed at least one parent who wasn't in jail. When she was released, Patricia looked at me with desperate gratitude. Thank you, Clayton. I know you didn't have to do that. I did it for Connor, Chloe, and Aiden, I replied. Not for you. We drove home in silence until Patricia finally spoke. Bradley came to see me in jail yesterday. I kept my eyes on the road, and he said he couldn't handle the drama. He's transferring to Harrison's Phoenix office. He's leaving town, Clayton. I felt something that might have been satisfaction, but mostly just exhaustion. Good. That solves one problem. He said he loves me, but he can't deal with all the complications. I pulled into our driveway and turned to face Patricia. Let me get this straight. You threw away 20 years of marriage, traumatized our children, and got yourself arrested, all for a man who's running away the moment things get difficult. Patricia started crying again. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you made the worst possible decisions at every turn. I got out of the car and headed for the house. It sounds like you traded a man who would bail you out of jail for a man who abandons you the moment you need him. Inside, Connor was waiting with Chloe and Aiden. All 3 kids looked at Patricia with expressions I'd never seen before: disappointment, confusion, and something approaching fear. Mom, Chloe said, her voice tight with emotion. Connor told us what happened. Is it true? Are you really getting divorced? Patricia looked at our children and broke down completely. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to happen. I made terrible choices, and now everyone I love is paying for them. Aiden, my 11-year-old, stepped forward and hugged his mother despite everything. Are you going to live somewhere else now? The question hung in the air like smoke. Patricia looked at me, clearly hoping I'd provide an answer that would make this easier. We're still figuring that out, I said carefully. But what's important is that both your mother and I love you, and that's not going to change no matter what happens between us. Later that evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Patricia and I sat in the kitchen with divorce papers spread between us like a roadmap to the end of everything we'd built together. I'll sign whatever you want, Patricia said quietly. I know I don't deserve anything after what I've done. This isn't about what you deserve, I replied. It's about what's best for the kids and how we move forward without destroying them in the process. For the first time in months, Patricia and I were having an honest conversation. It just happened to be about ending our marriage. 8 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in my new townhouse watching Connor pack for his final semester at college when he dropped the bombshell that put everything in perspective. Dad, I need to tell you something about Mom, Connor said, folding shirts into his suitcase with the methodical precision he'd inherited from me. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing engineering specifications for Davidson's new hybrid engine project. What about her? She's pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my coffee cup carefully, buying myself time to process information I should have seen coming. How do you know? Chloe told me. Mom told her last week, but made her promise not to say anything to you. Connor sat down on his bed, looking older than his 21 years. Dad, it's not Bradley's. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean? Bradley left town 8 months ago. Mom's been seeing someone else. Some guy named Derek she met at her AA meetings. Patricia had started attending Alcoholics Anonymous after her DUI conviction, part of the court-mandated rehabilitation program. Apparently, she'd found more than sobriety there. She's 4 months along, Connor continued. She wanted to tell you herself, but she's scared about how it'll affect the custody arrangement. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out the small yard I'd been planning to landscape. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia was building a new life while I was still cleaning up the wreckage of her old one. How are you handling this? I asked Connor. Honestly, I'm angry. Not about the pregnancy, but about the timing. She destroyed our family, put us all through hell, and now she's starting over like none of it mattered. I turned back to face my son, this young man who'd been forced to grow up too fast because of his mother's choices. It didn't matter, I said. What happened to our family mattered. But Connor, holding on to anger about your mother's decisions will only hurt you in the long run. Are you really okay with this? I considered the question seriously. Was I okay with Patricia having another man's baby while our divorce settlement was still being finalized? Was I okay with our kids having a half-sibling they'd barely know? I'm okay with the fact that it's not my problem anymore, I said finally. Your mother's choices are her own now. My job is to take care of you, Chloe, and Aiden, and to build a life that doesn't depend on what she does or doesn't do. Connor nodded slowly. Chloe's having a harder time with it. She feels like Mom's replacing us with a new family. I'll talk to her, I promised. And Connor, you don't have to protect me from information about your mother. I'm strong enough to handle whatever she does next. That evening, after Connor left for college, I called my lawyer to discuss how Patricia's pregnancy might affect our custody arrangement. The conversation was brief and reassuring. Her personal life wouldn't impact our existing agreement unless it posed a danger to our children. But as I hung up the phone, I realized something had shifted inside me. For months, I've been angry about Patricia's betrayal, hurt by her lies, frustrated by the damage she'd caused. Now, hearing about her pregnancy, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Patricia was moving on, building a new life with someone else. That meant she was truly out of mine. 18 months after Patricia moved out, life had settled into a rhythm I never could have imagined. Chloe was thriving as a senior in high school. Aiden had adjusted to the divorce better than expected, and I'd been promoted to senior engineering manager at Davidson Automotive. The doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon while I was helping Aiden with a science fair project about hydraulic systems. Through the window, I could see a woman about my age with auburn hair and a warm smile, holding a casserole dish. Dad, that's Ms. Anderson from down the street, Aiden said, looking up from his project. She brought cookies last week when I was sick. I opened the door to find Jennifer Anderson, the divorced nurse who'd moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago. We'd had a few casual conversations about property taxes and homeowner association rules, but this felt different. Hi, Clayton. I made too much lasagna again, and I thought you and the kids might enjoy some. Jennifer's smile was genuine, uncomplicated in a way I'd forgotten was possible. That's very thoughtful, I said, accepting the dish. Would you like to come in for coffee? Jennifer glanced at Aiden, who was watching our interaction with obvious curiosity. If you're sure I'm not interrupting. An hour later, we were sitting on my back deck while Aiden worked on his project inside. Jennifer was easy to talk to, She'd been divorced for 3 years, had 2 kids in college, and worked as a trauma nurse at Denver General. "Can I ask you something personal?" Jennifer said, sipping her coffee. "Sure." Aiden mentioned that his mother lives across town now, and that she has a new baby. "How are you handling all of that?" I considered the question carefully. How was I handling Patricia's new life? Her 6-month-old daughter with Derek, the awkward custody exchanges where I sometimes glimpsed this stranger who used to be my wife. "Better than I expected," I said honestly. For a long time, I was angry about what she'd done to our family. But anger is exhausting, and it doesn't change anything. Now I focus on what I can control, being the best father I can be to my kids, and building a life that makes me happy. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "My ex-husband left me for his secretary. Classic midlife crisis stuff. I spent 2 years being bitter about it before I realized I was only hurting myself. What changed? I met someone who reminded me that not all relationships end in betrayal. That some people actually mean it when they make promises." There was something in her voice, a quiet confidence that suggested she'd found peace with her past and hope for her future. "Are you seeing someone now?" I asked. Jennifer smiled. "I'm open to possibilities." 6 months later, Jennifer and I were planning a weekend trip to the mountains while our kids, hers visiting from college, mine splitting time between households, got to know each other. It wasn't the life I'd planned 20 years ago, but it was honest, uncomplicated, and built on mutual respect rather than desperation or deception. Patricia sent a Christmas card that year with a photo of her new family. Derek looked like a decent guy, and their daughter was beautiful. I genuinely hoped they'd be happy together, but more importantly, I realized I didn't need them to be anything other than part of my children's extended family. The best revenge against betrayal isn't more betrayal. It's building something better from the pieces that remain. Patricia had given me the gift of freedom from a marriage that was slowly dying. I'd just been too loyal to walk away on my own. Now, watching Jennifer laugh at something Aiden said while we decorated our Christmas tree, I understood that some endings are actually beginnings in disguise.